Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions, your premier platform for real-time global insights. Well, speaking of global, this was yesterday's global temperature anomaly map. What I really want to point out in this map is that while much of the eastern half of North America was set into a cooler pattern, although the Canadian prairies were warming up in through here, globally there were a couple of spots that were just so much warmer than normal. Specifically, this region over here, speaking of Europe and parts of Western Russia, and then also here in Australia. And yesterday, Australia set a new national record for the highest national average temperature at 107.4 degrees Fahrenheit. And it was great. The Bureau of Meteorology released a webpage that kind of showed what some of their December records look like for individual stations. And the Birdsville police station here, 49.5 degrees is their record. That's 121.1 degrees Fahrenheit set back in 1972. But it's important to understand that that's still about 13 degrees shy of the world record for the hottest temperature ever observed at 134 degrees set in Death Valley in California. Now, back in the United States, we were dealing with this. Check out this animation from yesterday. These are some of the lake effect snow bands and snow squalls that were coming within the colder air that was kind of occupying the northeastern part of the United States here. And some of these snow squalls made it all the way to New York City, and there was some widely shared videos over the last a day or so. This one's from a guy named David Jones, who's kind of let us all share his video. This is from the One World Trade Center, and you can see one of these snow squalls moving in here into New York City. Didn't put down too much snow, just a quick dusting because it was moving quite fast. But this is what happens when you're locked into a colder pattern like we are right now in North America. So take a look at this. This is the early morning 3:15 a.m. temperatures across the U.S. and we can see we got temperatures that were below freezing, getting all the way down into parts of Florida and pretty far south into Texas, while much of the Midwest and northern plains here locked into temperatures that are in the teens, and in some locations here in northern Minnesota into the single digits. And that's why we've got this morning freeze warnings out for places that are pretty far to the south here, where we're seeing our temperatures again getting into the upper 20s. But while much of the rest of the country doesn't have a very colorful all hazards map, you can see what's going on here in the Northwest, and things are going to be quite active in that area. So let's begin our rapid recap of what to expect here in the near term. We're going to start with this map that shows the next 7 days of total accumulated precipitation. For many of us here in the midsection of the United States, stretching basically from like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, all the way back over to the Front Range of the Rockies, getting north and south from Oklahoma clear up to North Dakota, we are going to be seeing a time period of relatively benign and quiet weather, while we're kind of painting the corners here of the United States with more active weather, specifically Northern California through Oregon and Washington, and then a cutoff low that sneaks in here later on this weekend, blanketing parts of the southeast with very, very heavy rainfall and at times some very windy conditions. I did put that dashed circle around parts of Wisconsin and Minnesota, specifically because some model discrepancy is showing up here once we get out beyond the next 5 days, suggesting there might be a little low pressure system that does sneak through that area, actually right around Christmas. I'll show you more about that in a few seconds. But zooming in on some of the rainfall totals we're anticipating here, this is kind of a carbon copy of what we showed yesterday, this new model run. Widespread 2+ inches of rainfall across the southeast as this system emerges over the weekend and spreads toward Florida and eventually off the southeast coast by the time we get into Monday into Tuesday. And in the northwest, we are getting a very strong onshore flow event with a trough that's sitting in the Gulf of Alaska and just taking all of that high precipitable water content air straight out of the Central Pacific and shoving it here into our west coast. Whenever we get that more direct west flow, it does really show the effect of of our rain shadow, and you can see that while we're not anticipating piling up much snow in the Rocky Mountains here, we are anticipating getting quite a bit here in the Cascades. So we have a coastal flood watch that's got right in through here. There is the problem with some freezing rain in and around that particular region in Oregon as well. But as you get up into the higher elevation here, it seems that most consistent forecasters suggesting above 3,000 feet, we're going to be seeing some huge snowfall totals, with some of the locations there in the Cascades picking up maybe as much as 6 feet of snow as we go through the next week. So this is desperately needed snow for this area. Take a look here. This is our basin average snow water content. I usually like to feature this only in our Western forecast video, but I just want to show you how desperate we are for snow in this area. Again, these are percent of normal, and you can see a lot of locations here well below half of what they should have this time of year, where almost every location outside of the circle I just drew so far is having a very, very snowy start to our winter. Now, to put this in perspective, we're looking at a map here that shows you the last 30 days in terms of percent of normal precipitation. We can see how much drier the Pacific Northwest has been compared to normal. But outside of that, it's really only been parts of southern Texas and eastern Texas that have been on the drier side of things, with just a few pockets where folks have been a little bit drier than average. So what are we looking at in terms of week 2? Well, the deeper trough that is plaguing the Northwest and Northern California here over the coming days is finally going to eject into the central part of the United States. And as it does so, it's going to do something a bit more like this. And that's that pattern that tends to create lots of low pressure systems that move out of the southern Rockies into the southern plains and then eventually move through the Midwest. So that's why we see that once we get past Christmas, the chances of there being a more active pattern to finish the month of December and start January in the regions where you're seeing these green colors is relatively high. And that's because the jet stream's doing this. By the time we get into Sunday, we can see its flow here. We're looking at wind speeds. It's dipping down like this and really funneling in that moisture into this corridor. But it then runs over the top here through the Canadian prairies and then connects back here just off the northeast coast while kind of cutting off a low pressure center here. And that's the low that's moving through over the weekend, pulling in plenty of moisture out ahead of it, bringing a lot of rainfall here to the southeast. But with this ridge building in this area, we're going to be seeing a pretty sizable rebound in our temperatures overall. Now, why does the pattern get more active once we get out past the Christmas holiday here? It's because that trough finally moves its way into the Four Corners region. And this again, remember, you come out of a trough into a ridge. This is the area that tends to have the most active weather. But again, we're looking out here beyond the 25th and 26th for things to really get going again in the midsection of the United States. To finish up our rapid recap, this is what we're looking at in terms of temperatures. So temperatures definitely moderating here in the near term across the Canadian prairies, the north central part of the United States, and getting into the Midwest, while we finally move that cooler air off the East Coast over the next 5 days. And then as we get into the 5 to 10 day time period, that is where the pattern is mostly focused with a deeper trough off the West Coast and broad ridging across the midsection of North America, hence the above average temperatures during that time period. And to finish this off, by the time we get into the new year, that is where that deeper trough feature comes in just like this. So you see the cold locked away here, but this is going to be a very active and very volatile time period in terms of our temperatures. So that's what we're looking at here as we stretch things out over the next 15 days and kind of our rapid recap. Let's now dig into some of the details. Early this morning, we looked here to see how much snow is sitting on the ground. If you were to melt all of it, what kind of liquid water would we get out of it? We can see that right now we have our snow swath from our last system here. Still quite a bit of snow in our northern plains, and you saw how much we're going to be adding here to the northwest in the coming days. Now, with the snow showers that are moving through the northeast, well, my question is, how much of this is going to be melting? So if we take a look at our high temperatures from the National Digital Forecast Database, day by day through the next week or so, we can see where we're going to get rid of some of that snow. So today, on Thursday, we're seeing high temperatures still in the teens in the north central plains, but watch the rebound in temperatures down here in the southern region throughout the coming days. Also, very cold air still in place in the northeast. So as we press play here, let's try that again. Whoops, sorry. Let's try that again and pause it right there. And this is how things change in the day on Friday. Moderation begins on Friday. This is now getting into Saturday and Sunday. Look at the warm-up happening here in the Central Plains, where we may be able to get 50-degree temperatures through the state of Nebraska and even into parts of southern South Dakota. Meanwhile, by the time we get into Sunday, widespread 50s coming through Iowa and some warmer conditions here. But why is Indiana, parts of Ohio hanging on to that cooler weather? Well, this is where some of our bigger snowfall totals were. So we got to get rid of that snow first before we can really get a rebound in those temperatures. But take a look at this. This is Monday's high temperatures, Tuesday's high temperatures, and this is what Christmas looks like. So when we see warmth like this spreading across the lower 48, where we're getting temperatures on Christmas that might be, if it gets up into the 40s and 50s into this quarter, that's 10 to, in some locations, about 15 degrees warmer than average. And look at the south. This is going to be a beautiful Christmas day. But after that, we do anticipate things changing. So speaking of change, take a look at this next map here. This is what we're anticipating snowfall change to look like. Not snowfall, excuse me, snow depth. So with that warm up, we are getting rid of that snow that was right in through here. I think the European models got this wrong. I think we will get rid of that snow that you see there stretching through parts of Indiana and Ohio. We're really only going to be able to keep it here in parts of North Dakota, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, and a little bit here in the Northeast, especially as you get more toward the interior. So with that warm up coming, we're going to be getting rid of a lot of that snow that's on the ground here. Maybe even getting snow free as far north as like Sioux Falls. So we'll see how this all shakes down. Okay, some details about precipitation. Now, as I let this play forward, you see that mainly through the next few days, it's the Pacific Northwest that gets slammed. Watch that again. Multiple rounds through the day today, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, just pounding the Pacific Northwest here with strong onshore flow. Now, on Saturday afternoon, we're going to be seeing that cutoff low finally starting to make itself felt here down in the southeast. So you can see the low pressure center sitting just south of our Gulf coastline here. Could be producing some very windy conditions, but bringing in quite a bit of moisture. And you saw here widespread 2+ inch rainfall amounts. And this is getting into Sunday afternoon, into Sunday evening and Monday morning. By the time we get into Tuesday midday, that's where I think that system is finally moving its way on off to the to the Atlantic here. Meanwhile, you didn't see anything really going on in the midsection of the United States. Under that larger ridge, we just don't have a lot of action happening here. Where the models begin to diverge gets us right out here around Christmas. You can see high pressure tries to build into the Dakotas, but we may have a little clipper that moves through Wisconsin, parts of Minnesota, and the UP of Michigan at that time. If I let this go out a little bit farther, remember I had some concern about the development of a low coming out of the Wyoming, Colorado area on the 26th. Well, you know, that's pretty far out there in the forecast, and there's still some hinting that that may potentially happen. But I've got to get this ridge that moves in, this high pressure cell that moves in here over the Great Lakes further to the east to get that to really occur here. So what I want to do is I want to show you just a quick multi-model analysis here for Christmas Day. So we're looking out here at the 25th, 12Z, so that's 6 a.m. Central Time. You can see the GFS is got a low pressure center that's sitting here right on, basically centered over Minneapolis. And the European model isn't quite buying something quite that strong, has a similar system, but it's more here, getting into parts of Canada. And then beyond this, the two models diverge significantly. So this will be next Friday, the 27th. You can see that the GFS is very excited about a big low right here sitting over central and western Illinois. And the European model has a giant high pressure cell sitting here. Now, again, we do anticipate the pattern becoming more active once we get past the 26th and 27th, but do not lock this in. It's just something that I'm going to be watching here for the rest of this week and next week to see if this does materialize about 9 days from now. So we've got a lot to be watching here, okay? Okay, as we finish up this video, I want to just show you, getting out to the day 10 pattern, a few important ridges to be looking at. This one here, the one coming here into Scandinavia, and this one pushing into parts of the Aleutian Islands. That's trapping a lot of our upper level cold air sitting here underneath that trough aloft, and it does allow the flow pattern, I think, to continue to move. In other words, we don't necessarily call this a blocked pattern, because remember, blocking patterns usually have to last for at least 7 to 10 days. And while some of these features are around for a few days, the whole pattern itself, I think, is unlocked and unblocked, which means it's going to continue to move. And what I'm concerned about is that over the next 10 days, we're storing up quite a bit of cold air here and cold here over Alaska. And while the warmth does spread here across the eastern half of North America, we do anticipate these two regions being the source region for some colder air that could invade the eastern half of North America as we get into the month of January. So enjoy the warm-up while it lasts, because I think some colder air is certainly on its way. And here's some supporting evidence for this. Looking now at the Madden-Julian oscillation. Reason why we're focusing on this is because we have kind of lost the strength of the Indian Ocean dipole. The MJO, which has been spending so much time in phase 1 1 and 2 is going over into its null phase temporarily, but you can see the model spread is taking this out and having it emerge somewhere here in phase, probably phase 7 initially. Once it does that, we'll watch it to come back around to phase 8, 1, and 2, and these are the cooler phases for North America. So we're going to watch that specifically because the tropics, I think, are going to be communicating quite well with what's going to be happening in the North Pacific jet stream, allowing for some cooler weather to certainly invade in the month of January. We'll keep a close eye on that. Now, for Brazil, they're pretty happy that it's coming out on this side because phases 3, 4, 5, and 6, especially phase 5, are the driest phases for the Brazilian monsoon. So while in the near term, we do see drier conditions really setting up here in Brazil's eastern growing regions, not much is slowing down the monsoonal flow coming into this area. And so to be a little bit drier than normal in Mato Grosso, this isn't that substantial. They normally get about this time of year about 2 to 3 inches of rainfall a week in this area. And so we're seeing a little bit of a deficit there over the next 10 days, but certainly we're going to be watching for that to fill in with time. Remember, as we get out to the beginning of January, watch the MGO sneak right back around to that phase 5 again, and that could be some drier conditions over here for South America. One last thing to point out, when you come down into Argentina, there have been reports of the growing areas north and west and south being dry, but you can see here in the central part right around Cordoba, things have actually looked wet and are continuing to look quite favorable for growing crops there. So with that, I'll go ahead and wrap things up, and I hope that you all have a great finish to your week, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.